Alrighty, welcome to another exciting lesson of Pro Mandarin. So what we got going on here is a lot of dialogue, and I don't want you to feel too overwhelmed by all this, so we're going to go over this line by line, and I'm going to put you in the middle of it. Now you're probably thinking, can I learn all this Mandarin at normal conversational speeds? Well, let's find out. Alright, so even though the entire video is only about 1 minute and 40 seconds, it actually takes quite a bit of time to explain everything. So we're not going to have a whole lot of time to actually put in an activity at the end of the lesson. However, periodically through this video, I'm going to ask, what would you say to that? And what you can do is write your answers in the comments below. And then I'll follow it up with what I actually said. Now, we will break down the conversation line by line to give you a sense of how a day-to-day conversation might be when Chinese people are doing something like, I don't know, taking a hike with each other. So we'll go ahead and watch that video first, and then we'll break it down line by line as we watch the clip again, so we can get a better sense of what it is that we're saying, how we're saying it, why we're saying it that way, and so on. All right, so let's go ahead and jump right into that. 对，就快到了。这个是
打电话没有信号，这里头
啊，对对对，没有信号。
这里真的好漂亮啊！
是，滑，小心。在这边
在那边上也行，
也可以在这边，我就是在这边爬的有点太快，
太快哈。
对对对，或者你也可以绕着这个石头。
对，你们往前走吧。
好，行，对，已经到了，到头了，怎么样？
下雨流下来就存在这儿，他们来
对
来取水喝。
对，一直都有水在这边。对，这是老鼠水缸
啊，
让开，
老鼠水缸。
对，就是印第安人的名字，就是一个犯罪者的，好脏，他就喝这个水，他那个牌子写他几天到几个月会藏起来在这边啊，然后就喝这个水。
对，只能喝这个水，没有别的水。
对，没有别的水，这个沙漠太干燥。
有点水。
这么干旱的地方还能有水？
四壁都是吃岩石，所以才有水。
All right, for the first phrase, what we got is 对，就快到了, which means, yeah, we're almost there. Okay, now to break it down a little bit more, the first word we got is 对, which means correct or yeah, yes, something along those lines. And then we got 就. Now 就 has a lot of different meanings. It could mean exactly, precisely, even if, just, simply, all sorts of different things. Now, I wouldn't get too hung up on the meaning because it doesn't always transfer directly over into English anyway. And honestly, we wouldn't even use it in the place that they use it in Chinese. However, in this case, you might say something like 我马上就到. So I'm kind of using this 马上, and 就 is almost like, hey, we're almost there, we're about to be there, or something like that, okay? And then we go on to say 快到了. Now, in another one of my videos, pretty much the only way to learn Chinese is that video I go over how to say you almost are done with doing something, or you're almost there, for an example, is what we're talking about right here. So one of the things I didn't mention in the video is that you could say 快, and then you say whatever it is that you're finishing up, and then 了 to finish it off. The other methods that I mentioned was 差不多, or 几乎, or 马上, and then 了. Those are the words that I go over in more detail in that video, and how to use them. Now, then I move on to say 这个, which means this. Now, I was going to say 这个是老鼠水缸, or 这个叫老鼠水缸, which means this is Mouse's tank, which is the name of the trail. And then at the end of the trail, we find ourselves a natural tank of water, which is where an Indian outlaw or renegade of some sort would hide out from the law for quite some time, which I explain a little bit later here in the conversation. So let's go ahead and move right along. Now, my mother-in-law, which is 岳母, she responded to me by saying 快到头了, which means that we've reached the end of the trail. It was more of confirming what I had already said, that we're almost there. So she was just repeating basically what I said. And then one more quick note. The difference between 到了 and 到头 is that 到了 means to have arrived, and then 到头 means to have gotten to the end. So they're basically the same thing, but in this case you'd say 到头 if you're talking about a path or something like that. Whereas 到了 could refer to just about anything, like you could say 到家了, which means we've arrived home, or we're home, but you could also just say 到了, as in we've arrived, or we're here. Now, I was going to go ahead and finish my thought, but then she had another thought that she wanted to share. So as I was saying, 这个是, and then she said, 打电话没有信号这里头. So what she was saying is there's no reception here to make a phone call. However, in Chinese, she said it in the order they would say it in, which is 打电话, which means to make a phone call, 没有信号, which means there's no reception, 这里头, which means here. All right, now for this one, if she were to say that to you, how would you respond to that? Again, be sure to pause the video and write your response in the comments below. Now in a video over here, want to learn Chinese, pick up on this method. I go in a lot more detail about how to talk about making phone calls in Chinese, as well as some other phrases that go along with the word da, and I'll go ahead and leave a link in the comments below for that. Now, to respond to 我的岳母, I say, 对，没有信号. So I'm just saying, oh yeah, there's no reception. And then after that, she says, 这里真的好漂亮啊, which means it's really beautiful here. However, the order that she's saying it in is 这里, which means here, 真的, which means really, 好 means good or well, but because you're putting it just before an adjective, in this case it means very, and then 漂亮啊. So 漂亮 is beautiful, and then is just a way of emphasizing the expression. And then I respond by saying 是, which means it is. However, normally a Chinese person would actually use 的 after that, 是的, which means the same thing. However, if you wanted to emphasize it, you would say 是啊, which still means the same thing. It's just different ways of emphasizing it. Now, I could have also said 对, which again means yeah or correct. So that's another way of saying it. So 是的 or 对. Now, as you see me right here, I almost slip and I say 滑, which means it's slippery or slick right here. So in this case, there was a lot of sand on some of these rocks, and so I almost slipped. And then she responds by saying 滑, which she's just saying like, oh yeah, it's slippery. And then I tell her 小心, which means to be careful. If you break those two characters apart, it means little heart, but that's one of the ways that Chinese people say to be careful. Probably one of the most common ways, actually. Now in this clip right here, I'm trying to explain to her that I'd almost slipped on this rock in a certain location and telling her where to hike instead. Now the way this conversation worked out was I said 在这边, which means right here, and then she says 在这边上也行, which means yeah, it's all right to go up here as well. And she was talking about getting over this rock in a different location. She looked at it and felt that it was flat enough for her to walk through. So the way you could break this down is 在这边, which means right here, 上, which means to go up, 也行. So 也 means also, and then 行 actually has quite a few different meanings, but in this case it means something more like okay, or it's permissible. 也行 is something that you'll often hear used at the end of a phrase, like saying, yeah, that's all right too, okay? So my response, which is actually similar to that, is 也可以在这边, which means also can right here. So 也可以在这边, which was just agreeing with her, yeah, you can do that over here. Now I follow that up with 我就是在这边爬得有点太快. So I point in another location and say, it was right here where I was hiking or climbing too quick. Now, 就是 has a few different meanings. It could be exactly, precisely, or something along those lines. So the way that I'm saying is, I was precisely right here, and then I say 爬得有点太快. Now, what I'm following it up with is that I was climbing or hiking a little too quick. So 爬 is a shortened version of 爬山, which means to hike or to climb a mountain or a hill or something. And 的 is in the way you're doing the action, which I explain in greater detail over here in this video, how to learn Chinese the right way. So when you say 的, that's what you're saying. You're explaining how did I do that thing? And then you follow it up with how you did it with an adverb. So 有一点太快, so a little bit too quick. Now, if I wanted to follow that up with saying I almost slipped, I could have said 我差点摔倒了. So 差点, and then the 了 at the end would be almost, as in something almost happened, and then 摔倒 would be to slip or to fall. So real quick, the difference between shuāidǎo and hua is saying it's slippery, and shuāidǎo is an action of slipping, as in slipping and falling. Now, 我的岳母, she responds by saying 太快哈. So my in-laws and other Chinese people that I've met typically do ask questions by saying ha at the end as well as ma or something else like that. So in this case, she just repeated what I said, 太快哈. So like, oh, is it too quick? And then I responded, 对对对, like, yeah. And then I give her a suggestion by saying, 或者你也可以绕着这个石头. So what that means is, or you can go around this rock. Now, to break it down a little bit further, 或者 means or, 你也可以, you can also, or you also can. According to Chinese grammar, that's the order of how you would say it. You also can. So 你也可以. And then I say 绕着这个石头. So 绕着 is to go around. 这个石头, this rock. And she agrees with me by saying 对，你们往前走吧. So she says, yeah, you guys go ahead. So if you know anything about ba, it has a few different usages, and in this case, she's giving a suggestion. So she says ba at the end. So what she says is 你们, you guys, 往前, go forward, and then 走, which means to walk. So she's saying, go on ahead. One of the things to know about this 往前 is that it's always followed up with how you're doing the thing that you're doing. So if you're driving, then you say 开, and then if you're walking, then you say 走. So you'd say 往前开 or 往前走. Okay, so that allows you to know that you need to keep going straight, or you need to keep going forward, or something along those lines. Now, just so you're aware, if somebody said 走吧, that also means let's go as well. So it's a suggestion of saying, hey, let's go ahead and leave now, as a standalone phrase. All right, now for this one, if she were to say that to you, how would you respond to that? Again, be sure to pause the video and write your response in the comments below. All right, and then I respond by saying 好,行, which means okay, all right. And then I say 对,已经到了. Yeah, we've already arrived. So 已经 means already, and 到了 means that we've arrived somewhere. Okay, now let's go ahead and move on to the next section. But before we do that, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. It really helps me out so I can continue to make quality content like this video. All right, now back to the lesson. Now, for the next conversation that I had, which was with my 岳父, I kind of like it a little bit better. For lack of a better term, he says things a little bit sloppier, and I actually kind of like that. If somebody says it not according to some kind of 标准, you know, a standardized Chinese that you would hear in a classroom setting, it makes me feel like, hey, this is a little bit more real, a little more 地道 or authentic. So what we got here is I say 到头了, which means we've arrived at the end, or we've got to the end, and then he responds by saying 到头了, which is just him agreeing with me or stating a fact that, yeah, we got to the end. And then I say 怎么样, which means like, how did it go, or how's it going? Now his response was 下雨留下来就存在这儿，他们来. Now what he's saying is when it rains, it accumulates right here, and then they come. And then he doesn't finish what he's saying because I think that's all he was going to say. And so I start agreeing with that and start commenting on that. So let's go ahead and break down what he says a little bit further though. So right here he says 下雨, which means to rain. I put in 的时候 because you could actually put that in there. So 的时候 would be at that time. Now I talk about this in another video, which I'll also put in the comments below. So then he continues on by saying 流下来, which means it runs down, as in water, or a liquid runs down something. And then 就存在这儿. So 就 has a lot of different meanings. Now in this case it might mean something like simply or just. And then 存 also has a lot of different meanings. It could be to exist or survive or something like that, but it also means to save or to accumulate or something like that. So in this case it'll be accumulates, and then 在这儿, which means right here. So again, 下雨的时候留下来就存在这儿, or 下雨留下来就存在这儿 means the same thing, which is when it rains, it runs down and accumulates here. So he says 他们来取水喝. So 他们来 means they come. 取水 means to get water. 喝 means to drink. So 取水喝 means to get water to drink. So he could have just said 他们来喝水, and that would have meant the same thing, but he decided to be a little bit more specific about how they get the water. All right, now for this one, if they were to say that to you, how would you respond to that? Now this will be number 3 for the comments below. So right here I respond to the first part, not the second part. So I say 对，一直都有水在这边, which means yes, there's always water here. So 一直都 means always, and then 有 means there is, and then we have 水在这边, which is water right here. Now, if you're wondering how to say always is or never is in Chinese, you can check out this video right here or this video right here. Now, back to what I was saying, I followed up to explain a little bit more about what this place is or what it's called. So I say 对，这是老鼠水缸. So it may sound a little bit weird to him because he doesn't know the name of it. So he's hearing, yeah, this is the mouse's tank, or this is the mouse's water tank, or something like that. So he responds to me, 老鼠水缸, and then he kind of laughs at it. Now, over here, you may have noticed that I also said 让开. So 让开 means move out of the way or get out of the way or something like that. Usually you're telling a little kid something like that. So that's what I was doing, is telling a little kid, okay, can you move out of the way? Now, to be a little bit more polite, you could say 让我过去一下, which means like, let me pass through or let me get by you or something like that. That would be something more you would say to an adult, like let's say you're on a crowded bus or you're trying to just get by somebody. Now, if you wanted to be even more polite, a lot of times they'll say 麻烦你 at the beginning of it. So 麻烦你让我过去一下. Just keep in mind though that there's so many different ways to say the exact same thing in Chinese. So this is just one of those ways. All right, so then right after he says 老鼠水缸, then I say which means yeah. It's just kind of a way of agreeing with each other on something. Now I clarify a little bit more about what this 老鼠水缸 is all about. So I say 对，就是印第安人的名字. So I'm saying yeah, it is an Indian's name or an Indian person's name. And then I follow it up with 就是一个犯罪者的. What I was actually doing here is I said 就是一个, which means it is a 犯罪者, which is an outlaw. But then I say 的, which I could have also followed that up with 名字. So the name of an outlaw is what I would be trying to say actually. And then I kind of climb down there a little bit more and I go 好脏, which means it's so dirty. So in this case, 好 means so or very. And then I start to say 他就喝这个水, which means he would just drink this water. But then I change what I'm saying because I wanted to be a little bit more clear about what I was going to say. So I say 那个牌子写他几天到几个月会藏起来在这边. So what I'm saying here is that sign says he would stay here from a few days to a few months hiding out over here. So to break it down, that sign, 那个牌子写 wrote or had written down. We usually say said. That sign said. Now, technically, you could say 那个牌子说了 or something else like that. Again, we're talking about a little more spoken Chinese rather than textbook style Chinese here. You might hear them say something like 那个牌子说了, but most of the time I hear them say 写了 or something like that, or 写 when they're talking about something that they've read, okay, like a sign or something like that. But in English, we pretty much only say, that sign said you got to slow down, or that sign said whatever, okay? And then next we have 他几天到几个月. So he from a few days to a few months. 会. Now, 会 has a few different meanings like can or will, but in this case it means would. 藏起来, hide out, 在这边, right here. Now I clarify a little bit more about how he survived, which I say it again, and I say 然后他就喝这个水. So 然后 means then, 就喝这个水 means just drink this water. So he would just drink this water. I'm not going to say he again because it's already known who I'm talking about, and I don't really need to say it right there. Usually when I say 就, a lot of times you don't typically need to say the pronoun again. All right, and then he responds by saying 对，只能喝这个水. Or in other words, yeah, you can only drink this water. So again, 对 is yeah, 只能 means only can, 喝这个水, drink this water. And then he finishes by saying 没有别的. So he says there isn't any other. All right, again, if they were to say that to you, how would you respond to that? Now this is number 4, or the last one for the comments below. So I say 对，没有别的水，这个沙漠太干燥. So I say, yeah, there isn't any other water. 这个沙漠, this desert, 太干燥, is too arid, too dry, okay? And then there's a little 小孩, a little kid that says 脏水, which means dirty water, or it could even be sewage or something like that. But anyway, so he's saying dirty water. And then 我的岳母, then she follows it up by saying 这么干旱的地方还能有水, which is kind of like saying, how could there be any water in such a dry place like this? So the 这么 is saying like this, 干旱, which is dry or arid, 的地方 type place. So 的地方, you could say the place that is 这么干旱, like this, dry. But you say it in the order as you see it written. And then say 还能有水, which would be there still could be water. So 还能 would be still can, and then 有水, there is water. So the way that she's stating it is saying, again, how could there be any water in such a place like this? She's not really asking a question, she's actually making a statement about that. Like, there's no way that there could be water in a place like this. And then 我的太太, she says 一直都有水. 对. So there's always water. Yeah. And then 我的岳父, the very end, he finishes it by saying 四壁都是岩石，所以有水. 四壁 is four walls. It's one of the ways of saying walls. And then he says 都是, so it all is 岩石, rocks. Okay, it's one way of saying rocks. And then he says 所以有水, so there is water, or therefore there is water. Okay, now that being the end of the video, I did want to say, I know I went over that stuff kind of quick actually, and didn't get you in a whole lot of speaking practice for this video. However, you did get a lot of listening practice, and a nice breakdown of everything that was spoken about. And I also wanted to point you in the right direction of other videos that I have that go over some of these concepts, and it allows you to become fluent in using these different sentence structures that you hear in this video. And if you like this video, make sure you 点赞订阅和分享这个视频, which means to like, subscribe, and share this video. And until next time, 下次见.